I signed the lease and I was very scared. And I got the keys in my hand on March 1st. And then COVID happened.
Hello, print friends, and welcome to the 62nd episode of Pine Copper Lime, the internet's #1 printmaking podcast. I'm your host, Miranda Metcalf. I release weekly podcasts with people in the print world who are doing something a bit beyond the expected. So please subscribe on your podcast listening app of choice. You can also find Pine Copper Lime on Instagram and Facebook, and you can sign up for our monthly newsletter with print news from around the world, all at pinecopperlime.com. We also have a Patreon page, where, if you like this podcast and you got a couple of dollars you'd like to contribute to something good, you can get super cool thank yous like stickers, buttons, totes, and postcards. Printmaking forever, shun the non-believers. This episode of Pine Copper Lime is brought to you by our sponsor, Speedball Art Products, who've been bringing a diverse range of high-quality products to your creative practice since 1997. Their newest exciting initiative is Speedball's Print Posse. Working with contemporary printmaking icons, Speedball has invited each artist to design and name an ink of their choosing. Artists like Valerie Luth, who worked with Speedball to design her stunning shade of relief ink, Electric Pink. Valerie is known for her extremely detailed and intricate woodcut she produces at Tugboat Print Shop, of which she is also a co-founder. Her Speedball Print Posse ink is a buzzing pink, perfect for adding some pizzazz to your composition, or using it to fluorescent tint other colors. For more information on Speedball's Print Posse, or to find out where you can pick up a can of your new favorite ink, check out speedballart.com. I'm very excited to welcome back to Pine Copper Lime my guest this week, Allie Norman. Her return marks the first repeat guest in PCL's 2-year history. When we last left our hero, Allie had just been bequeathed a litho press in stones by a mysterious stranger at SGCI 2018 in Las Vegas. And this episode picks up where that story leaves off. She shares with us how she felt that destiny kept pushing her towards opening her own community print studio, only to have the keys handed to her on the 1st of March, right before diving into the madness of COVID. She had to pivot her expectations and her business in unexpected ways, and now she's about to celebrate the grand opening of Labyrinth Studios on October 1st. If you'd like to hear more about her background and her current artistic practice, we all chatted about that the first time, so knock the dust off episode 10 and give that a listen. But without further ado, sit back, relax, and prepare to get back into it with Allie Norman. Hi Allie, how's it going?
Hey Miranda, good to talk to you again. I'm doing pretty good. How are you over there?
I'm good. I'm just in my podcasting nest tucked up against the door of my quarantine hotel, just a normal 2020 kind of situation.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, it's such a weird time.
It really is. But I am thrilled to have you back as Pine Copper Lime's first ever repeat friend, repeat guest, because you were on in the very early days. I think you're episode 10 maybe, which, was approximately 10,000 million years ago. And you've been working and building and evolving in that time, as hopefully we all have. And you've got some exciting projects coming up that I'm really looking forward to learning more about. But before we dive into that, would you just let people know who you are and where you are currently? And how would you describe it as what you do?
Okay, well, I am Allie Norman. I am currently located in Tampa, Florida. It's been a pretty wild ride during all of this COVID stuff. I guess I'm like just a lover of printmaking and magic. I consider the printmaking process like very alchemical and very spiritual and very connected to history and the earth. And it's like my lifeblood, you know, I love it so much. And I really love being a teacher. I really love sharing these things and keeping the traditions alive. And I think that's like my life dharma, I guess. Yeah, that's about where I'm at. I do a lot
Beautiful.
of different things.
Yeah, excellent. Well, we got to do a pretty deep dive on your background, where you grew up, coming to art, and all of that in the first episode. So I'll definitely put a link to that in the show notes if anyone wants to hear that. But just so we're not starting totally fresh, would you just tell us just a little bit about where you grew up and when did printmaking come into your life?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I actually grew up here in Tampa, Florida. Yes, I am a native Floridian. Proud of it, you know, in a
Yeah,
weird
yeah.
way. I actually do really love it here. I'm really happy to be back. I kind of traveled all over the place, and I originally in high school I really loved drawing, but I also really loved darkroom photography because I just had this really cool photo teacher in high school, and so I kind of like putzed around and was undeclared in college for a while, and decided like I wanted to actually go to art school and applied to SCAD and applied for a bunch of like scholarships and stuff. And, you know, my parents really did not take me seriously at all. But I, you know, eventually like decided to make it happen for myself and switched to SCAD and started taking it really seriously and like, you know, taking myself seriously as an artist. And I kind of just knew that I really liked chemicals and I really liked making a mess. And I really felt like there was kind of something inside of myself that I needed to like, I always felt like it was something I needed to get out, you know, like I always needed to express something. And I really liked photo and I really liked illustrating and stuff. And I actually took lithography as an elective. And I love lithography now, but you know, back then we were not exactly buds as it usually goes with litho. But I kind of would in this litho class look through the door to the etching studio and see people etching and like, you know, I'm like they're putting metal in like baths of acid and like what the heck are they doing, like what the heck is that, you know? And so I signed up for etching and like wow, I was like I pretty much dropped like everything else in my life and was like this is it. And it seemed very like illogical of a thing to pursue at the moment because my parents were like, why don't you do like digital art, you know? And at that time I was like very good at Photoshop, like pretty good with computers. And it, you know, somehow it just like the analog really called to me, especially like, you know, I, like you said, in our little chat before this, like we're all kind of secret nerds and the chemistry and everything really just like pulled me in and kept me there. And I ended up going on a little bit of like a, I guess like a printmaking walkabout where I went and I lived in New York, briefly lived in Rhode Island. You know, I did like some residency stuff. And then I went to grad school at UGA and I really loved that. And I got to teach. And then, you know, I got lucky enough that I was kind of making also some money, like selling my prints just online kind of casually and got offered a job here in Tampa just to be like an adjunct, you know, and I thought that was really cool because I got to come home to where like my family is and it had been like, you know, 10 years at that point. You know, there's never really been any kind of community art space at all, period, in Tampa. Like it's basically there's a lot of really talented people here, but it's a little bit of a desert as far as like there's no community spaces. There's only like one gallery and it's all, you know, very conceptual. There's nowhere to learn any kind of crafts that's not behind like an institutional paywall. So I kind of had been like talking about how Tampa needed a print shop for, I don't know, like 8 years or something like that. And then, you know, lots of synchronistic weird things happened to get me to where I am now.
So why do you think it is that Tampa was kind of lacking in that community art space? Because it's not a small city.
I really have no idea. And, you know, St. Pete has St. Pete is like our other little sister city that's on the other side of the bridge. And they have a much better arts scene. But even still, there's not really anywhere that you can go. And there's a small letterpress shop that you can learn some stuff in St. Pete. But there's no etching, no lithography. There's a Jewish cultural center where you can learn ceramics, but there's only one. There's like a 2-year wait list to get in the class.
Gosh.
And you can't sell anything that you make in it or anything like that. You know, it's like hobbyists only. And I don't really know why. Like you said, it's a pretty big city. Like there's a lot of really cool and talented people here. And there's just no real hub for that kind of thing. And I kind of felt like very called to do that. But when I got here 2 years ago, I kind of was like, oh yeah, maybe in like 5 or 6 years, I think my long-term plan would be to start a studio. And then, you know, life kind of just like kept pushing me that way. Like it was very obvious that that was what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, because I know that, so the last time we spoke was on the heels of SGCI 2018 in Vegas. And you kind of had this synchronistic fate, kismet experience there, whatever you want to call it, where you met someone there who was looking to basically bequeath a litho studio. And you were kind of in the right place at the right time. And that had just happened when we were talking. What happened with that? Is that part of the project that you're opening now?
Yeah, so that was the beginning of many weird experiences like that, very much like just synchronicity where, you know, somebody's got the widow of a dead lithographer has all this heavy, weird stuff in her house that she doesn't know what to do with, you know, and she contacted Tamarind, like, what do I do with this? And, you know, I was, I guess, the only Floridian that anybody knew and that was like willing to go like bring a U-Haul over there and grab all this stuff. So it ended up just kind of being one of those things where I was like in the right place at the right time. And there's just not really that many Floridians doing this kind of stuff, especially lithography, like, oh my God, you know. And I felt really kind of intimidated because I liked litho, but I never really felt like I was super great at it. It was like, you know, it was like the first printing process that I had learned, but I never felt like a lithographer, you know. I always felt like, ooh, I don't know. And when I got all this equipment, it kind of forced me to be like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to make some lithographs, you know. And I started getting pretty good at it. And, you know, slowly, like, stuff like that happened where, like, people would send me equipment or people would find out about equipment that was not wanted or, you know, people just trying to get rid of stuff. And then it also kind of became, like, this hobby of, like, always checking Craigslist and always checking, like, Facebook Marketplace for, like, you know, people getting rid of stuff.
Yeah. And when you say stuff, is it like presses or stones or plates? Like what kind of things were finding you?
Oh my God. Literally anything and everything. Like I have a million eBay notifications for like etching press, litho press, like, you know, whatever. And I had, you know, my house, I live in like a 700 square foot cottage, you know, that's 100 years old, and my house was like half printing equipment. And people just kind of kept asking me like, hey, are you going to do workshops? Hey, are you going to be doing any of this? Is there any way I could use your press? And I remember like asking those questions when I was fresh out of undergrad, you know, asking like whenever I would come here to visit my parents, I'd be like messaging the couple little studios here that are master printers, like, hey, could I pay you to come use your press?
Yeah.
You know, I'm in town for a month or two, you know, with my parents or something. And it was always like, no, which I totally understand. Like they're master printers. They don't want you doing that. But it's like, you know, I remember feeling like, oh, I have all these skills and I have like this extreme love for this process and I can't even do it. I can't even like find a place to go. I have nowhere to go. And I felt kind of like empty and sad, about that. People were then asking me about my equipment, and I was like, I felt really like I was remembering what it felt like to really want to be doing those things and to be really interested and to really just not have access to the equipment. And, I had just been accumulating equipment for maybe like 5 years since I got my first little etching press. And that one came from a junkyard,
Oh my gosh.
And so, yeah, it's like, I really like fixing things and restoring things. And I really like collecting. I think honestly that I like just messing around with the machinery just as much as I like actually making the art and using the machinery.
Well, didn't you say that like your father fixed cars, or you had some connection where you kind of grew up tinkering? Is that right?
Yeah, my dad spent my whole childhood building an airplane in our garage.
That was it. It's amazing.
Yeah, so like there's all these pictures of me as like a little kid, like doing fiberglass and rivets and things like that, So I just always like have really loved that stuff. Pretty much just like working with my hands in any way. And so, I just kind of was like, well, maybe I should just like look into some spaces. Maybe I should just kind of check around.
What harm could it do, right? Just
right.
Look. Yeah.
Yeah, just like I was very non-committal about it, very like casual, like not gonna consider this like a big deal or anything. I was just gonna look around and maybe I would find like a little bit of warehouse space or something. But I was really looking for something that had like a bay door that I could drive a forklift in and like
what every woman wants,
Yes, exactly. The key to my heart, a bay door and a forklift.
And a forklift.
So it's like basically I just like started looking around and, it was kind of, there was like, man, not so much cool stuff. And this was like the end of 2019. So it was like, back when life was normal. And, it was Christmas. I didn't really find anything. I wasn't really taking it too seriously, just kind of like looking around. And then maybe in like January or so, I kind of saw this like weird building with like a cardboard sign in the door, like window that had like a Sharpie phone number on it. And that was like it.
Wait, did you just see it in person? Like you were walking by?
Yeah.
Oh my god!
I was driving by.
Yeah,
and it's really close to my house, and I was just like, oh, weird. Like, I wonder what's in this building. And I called the number and was like, hey, are you guys like renting this building? It was just a Sharpie phone number. I didn't really know like what that's about. And they were like, oh yeah, we're gonna be renting those soon. We just haven't really like put them. They're still being fixed up. Like, they're not for rent yet. But you can look at them. And I was like, okay. And, the one with the Sharpie phone number, it didn't really light my fire. But there was one down the road that was previously a doggy daycare. But before that, it was a engine repair shop. And it was kind of like this old warehouse with this big like engine crane in it that like smelled like dogs. And you know what? It was just fate. And I really was like, wow, like this is supposed to be like my space. Like I just like felt like, what are the chances that I called this Sharpie phone number and then, they took me to this other place that was just like this big, really beautiful vintage old car shop turned retail space. And so in the front, it has these like big, beautiful vintage, like, retail windows. But then there's kind of like all these old cranes and cinder blocks.
Oh my God.
And the big bay door in the back. And it's just very like, the best of both worlds. Like, I was like, wow, this, right? So it was like really, and it was a little bigger than I expected. And I was like, well, maybe this front space could be more like a gallery, retail. We could have more of a community area in the back. And then it kind of like developed from like, maybe I'll get a warehouse for myself to like, maybe it'll be a community space to like, maybe it'll also be a little bit of a gallery. And then like, maybe it'll also be like a community space for sharing ideas. And then like, and then it kind of developed into like a catch-all for like, man, it's just like, people just need a space to be together and share ideas, especially, now. So then, I signed, this is just like such a weird story, but I had saved a little bit of money, and I got really lucky that my parents had this kind of little nest egg where they put a couple $1,000 in an account when I was like a baby or something.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, "Oh, well, you've been talking about wanting to do this forever." And we just, I had no idea that
Wow.
existed. But so it was like, it was even more serendipitous that they were like, "We think what you want to do for the community is really nice. And like, we saved this money for you when you were a kid. And like, now you can have it." So it was like, wow. I was like, holy crap.
That's so beautiful that they were just like, it was just this like, yeah, this little magic nest egg that like fell onto you like right when you needed it.
Yeah, well, and they had always had it, but they never really told me. They were like, "We thought like if you ever needed to, like buy a house or get married or start a business or something, that eventually you would need it for something." But they didn't want to tell me that it existed, which
Yeah.
I actually think that's pretty cool.
I was gonna say, yeah, I think like if my parents had told me when I was like 21 that, they'd had a nest egg for me, I'd be like, give it to me now. I'm gonna go disappear into India for 6 months. Like, I just would have,
Right?
like,
I'm going shopping.
exactly. Like, it would have, yeah, it would not have had the destiny that that probably they meant for it had I known I had it, yeah, in my more wild days.
Right? So I really felt like I was like, wow, all this like pieces are kind of falling into place for this to be a thing. What I thought was a pipe dream maybe even like 6 months ago to like quickly became like something beyond my even control. It was just like the universe was like, this is what you're doing now. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay. And so I signed the lease, and I was very scared. My dad
Yeah.
co-signed it with me because I was just like, what am I even doing? But he really believed in me, which I'm really grateful for. And I got the keys in my hand on March 1st. And then COVID happened.
Oh my gosh, wait, March 1st, 2020?
Yes.
Oh my gosh! Allie!
I know. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Oh my
Because
gosh.
I really felt like I had been pushed by
Mm-hmm.
like divinity to do this. I was like, really felt like this was what I was supposed to be doing, and I was doing it at the right time. And so there was a moment where I was really bummed. I was like,
Of
oh my God,
course.
my friends are like losing their jobs, and I was teaching online, and that sucked. And like, oh man, it was just like everything felt really like such a bummer. It was like, it was really hard to I went from riding high on like the possibilities of my dream,
Right.
to just like uh but it was like a lot of other weird stuff happened. I guess like right before that, there was a guy who had been a production letterpress printer in Ocala, which is like this little town north of Tampa, and he was just getting rid of his entire shop. He wanted like nothing for it. He literally was like, I need to be out of here by, it was like right
Mm.
before March started. It was like the very first week of March, I think, that I got all of his stuff out. Or I think it was even like March 1st because he needed to get out because he was like, that was the end of his lease. And
Yeah.
he basically was getting to the point where he was like, if you have a guy with a forklift here, like take everything. Like, I bought like one press and like one cabinet of type, and I left with like a million, like, boxes of furniture, boxes of ink, boxes of Timpans, boxes of freaking whatever. I left with like 9 cases of type. Like a million fonts, a million things, like, tons and tons and tons of like just it's an overwhelming amount of stuff
And
from this guy.
it's so important though, because it's like if those types don't go to someone else who knows and loves them, like they just get tossed, and then they're gone forever. Like they're so important that like we have to take care of the history in that. So it's so good that it found
Exactly.
you.
Exactly. So I felt very like, "Ah," like, he's like, take it or I'm taking it to the junkyard, which is like the number
Exactly.
one thing that you shouldn't say to me because then I will take it. Uh, but it was pretty much like, and then I had like a moving truck there, and the guy is just like packing stuff in boxes and putting it in the truck, and I don't even know what he's giving me. It's like,
Hmm.
it was so much stuff that it was so over, like, even to this point, like almost 6 months later, I still have not even sorted like half of it. It is
Amazing.
just ridiculous, but I love having it all, and it is so beautiful. And there was a couple other rescues that happened like within this time where it was kind of like, okay, well, shit's weird, like I'm just gonna like look for some presses and like try to
Right.
make this old doggy daycare beautiful. Like, um, because at that point, we're all like, oh, 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Right. I remember
Yeah.
those days.
Remember
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Puerto Grafico's definitely still going on. Like, that's going to happen. Like, yeah.
oh my God, I know. I remember when it got canceled, I was like, no. I am always cold as a Floridian at SGCI. I'm always cold. And I was finally ready to be at a print conference
Yes.
and in a bikini, and it never happened. And now it's going to be in Providence,
Yeah,
and
I
it's
was
going to
gonna
be cold
say.
again. I was like, no.
I know, it's the Southern graphics, guys. Yeah, I know. It's like,
Yeah. Why is it always got to be cold? Even when it was in Texas, it was cold. I was
yeah,
like, ugh.
I remember that. Yeah.
But although Portland, unseasonably beautiful.
Portland was really nice. And Vegas had its days,
Yeah.
but like the nights got cold because it was the desert. So, yeah, I know. I feel like the loss of that conference in Puerto Rico was something that like it just really sucks basically because it felt like so significant for our community to finally have like a conference in like a Spanish speaking city when like Latin American printmaking is so huge and like bringing all this focus to that. And anyway, that's like a whole nother conversation, but yeah, like I get it. Like I remember those days where it was like, yeah, this is going to be over like a month from now. We're going to be talking about, like, remember when that crazy flu came through? It'll be fine. And then, yeah, here we are, September, and we're still, like, there's still places that are getting highest death, highest infection rates, peaking, It's awful and wild.
Yeah, Florida, we went through some of that like during the summer, which was just
Mm-hmm.
like, typical Florida. Everybody's like, fuck it, I'll do whatever I want. And it was just, it ended up like now our deaths are pretty low, but there was a while where like it was like, come on guys, just do the thing for like a little while so we could stop having this.
Even in Australia, I would meet people and they'd be like, oh, you're American? Things are really bad in Florida right now. Like that was like in Australia they were talking
Yeah.
about Florida.
But I feel like we're like the classic scapegoat for anything anyway. Like they're always just trying to like they're like, at least we're not Florida.
Yeah, true. Unfortunately.
But it's like pretty normal here now. It was definitely, we got a lot of criticism because we were like one of the first, I think, states to like actually open back up, and like everything was very like, people were like, are you kidding me? And other people were like, yeah, we do what we want, America.
Right,
And it's just
right.
like, it was very like weird. I don't know. And I didn't know what to do either because I was like, I don't know. So I went through days where I was like, I'm scared, and I went through days where I was like, oh, this is dumb.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it was hard to know because of all the conflicting information.
Absolutely.
Like, what to do? What did
What
you
do you
think?
do?
What
do you do? But yeah, so during the time that I think when it sounds like you were in lockdown and while Florida was having that hard time, were you really just focusing then on like fixing up the interior of your shop?
Yeah, so a lot of the equipment that I got was like totally disgusting. Like I also was given some letterpress equipment that was like in a barn for like 20 something years.
Classic. Yeah.
Classic, yeah. And same thing where I was like, well, I don't want that to like die, so yeah, I'll take it. And then, and then there was like, oh, well, do you want this paper cutter? And it was like this giant cast iron paper cutter. And it was like, yeah, I guess so. Like, like, oh man, so it's just like, all of it was like so like in disrepair,
Yeah.
and it kind of felt like we had all the time in the world
Right.
to
Well, you're like, sure, like an
not
80-pound paper cutter. Like, how could that be, inconvenient? Right.
yeah, except that it's like 2 tons.
Is it really?
It's huge. It's like cast iron, and it's like 40 inches across, and it's from like the 1880s. It is no joke. That thing is a monster.
That's amazing, though.
Yeah, it's really beautiful now because we like restored it. I have this intern who I'm really lucky. She just like really loves printmaking and really just wants to hang out, and she's willing. I'm like, yeah, you want to come and like paint metal for like 8 hours? And
Yeah.
she's like, yeah. That's been really fun to kind of have, a second pair of hands, and she's excited. I actually just taught her how to use the letterpress today, which I think was like a really full circle moment for her because she helped me restore a lot of that equipment before she knew how to use it. So it's really cool. But it was like the inside of the space was really gross, and, cleaning up dog hair everywhere all the time. And it was like all the walls were like white, like a hospital. And and the floor was like disgusting. It was basically, we painted like every wall, and we painted the floors twice, and we painted a lot of the presses, and we a lot of the drums on the presses were like covered in rust. I got an etching press from a woman that died in Tallahassee, which is like 5 hours north of here, and her husband was like trying to get rid of this old press, and it was just like, I convinced my dad to like drive up to Tallahassee with me in a U-Haul and just like weird stuff like that, where it was kind of like, okay, well, there's not really much that I can do except like kind of enjoy like the time of like working on this space. It's like things that I really enjoy anyways, like spaces and fixing things and making things beautiful.
Well, it sounds like while no one wants a global pandemic to happen ever, and particularly when she's just signed the lease on her new business,
right?
It does sound like the extra space and time really allowed you to take your time with the build out of Labyrinth.
Because of like the state of the building and everything, I had negotiated like that I got three free months for build out anyway. So the first 3 months I wasn't even paying any rent or anything. I was chilling. So I was kind of like, oh, okay, well, I'm just gonna, like have fun with it. And then, like there was some serious existential crisis action kind of in the middle of summer, where it was like, okay, now there's like a bunch of half-fixed stuff in this like kind of pretty space, but like we're still in a pandemic, and like, am I ever going to be able to open this? Is this just like a big mistake? What am I even doing? It was like I was more than halfway there, and I could like maybe see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it also still felt like things were not good. Our numbers were really high here. Stuff was shutting back down. We had been open a little bit, and then they started shutting stuff back down. The numbers were spiking like crazy. They wanted to send all the kids back to school. They're like, are we going to go back to school? Are we not going to go back to school? Are we going to do this? Like it was a total shit show here. And I was just like, oh my God. Cause I felt like I had been kind of going on faith that like, I was like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'll just like ride it out and do this. But then when my 3 months of build out kind of were over, and I still had a lot of stuff I needed to do, and it was still a pandemic, I was like, oh my God, what have I done? I was having a hard time with it. I was really like, man, I thought this was like what I was supposed to be doing, but like maybe I'm dumb. Like, maybe. So like, I don't know. And then it was like, I got this nest egg, like I'm not like totally screwed. Like I got all of this stuff fell into my lap in like the weirdest ways, and I'm gonna like keep pushing through. And, and now everything is really like beautiful. Our cases are way down. Stuff is starting to feel a little bit more normal. Of course, everybody's still very cautious. We've all got the masks on. We've got, but people are starting to gather more. People are starting to feel less like, scared all the time. And I think what it really is crazy to me is like the people coming out of the woodwork, like that really just want to be involved in the community.
I
Like they're
bet.
so thirsty for it. You know, they just want to be like, they want to be involved in something. Everybody's been so isolated that they just want to like do something and learn something, be creative, like, you know, do something new. And so I think, you know, it ended up being kind of this thing where I just kind of waited it out like a weird storm or something and
Yeah.
hoped that things were going to be good. And now I'm feeling incredibly hopeful about the opening. You know, I
Yeah.
have a ton of really amazing artists have sent me work for the gallery. And, you know, I got a lot of, I, you know, was able to spend some of that nest egg money buying wholesale work from artists that I really love and kind of
Beautiful.
help support people like during a bad time too, which felt really nice.
Yeah.
And, you know, not that like they need my help or anything, but, you know, just to be able to be like, hey, can I give you a big paycheck now and like, you know, buy some stuff? That
Yeah.
was cool. And, you know, I just feel like excited, you know.
Yeah. So can you you know, now that we've kind of we've gotten in the story to the point where Labyrinth is in its almost fully realized state, can you just give us a rundown on what you know? Because obviously you said you still have books you haven't gone through, but like, but can you tell me like how many presses do you have? What, how big's the gallery space? Like, are you going to be doing monthly exhibitions? Like, what's the full range right now of what Labyrinth's offering?
Oh my goodness. Okay. It has been a wild year. Like, what a ride. But I'm glad I had like faith in the process. I still feel like it's going to be great.
I agree.
I have obviously my litho press that I got from Fate when we met. And I've got my old little etching press from the junkyard. I've got a larger etching press that is from, you know, a dead woman in Tallahassee. I've got two letter presses, two CMP letter presses, and one works, one does not work yet. That's going to be a project for after we open, but it has a home. It's not getting any more disrepaired, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, even then, like I made friends with a letterpress artist from St. Pete who's like, oh yeah, I've got chucks for that. I've got some rollers, I think, rolling
Yeah.
around for that size press, you know, like, and so it's very funny how the community works in that way. And I've also got a couple of little, like, you know, business card size and like index card size little handheld letterpresses,
Mm-hmm.
which are really cool. Those I just kind of like came into. One was from the artist in St. Pete, and I think the other one I got on eBay for like $50 or something. So it's like half broken.
Yeah.
But it's just like one of those things where I got the alert and I was like, gotta have it. I've got also like a Glowforge laser cutter, which is really cool. I love that thing.
Mm.
And something that I really want to do is a series of online classes that are going to be on Patreon. So, I mean, the first thing I'm going to start with is the one that everyone wants to learn, which is the the jewelry saw, cut plate, and intaglio stuff. And I think it would be really cool to do like laser cutter chincolet, which is awesome. And just want to get really wild with the techniques that we can do, merging the like contemporary technology and the super old school. I've done letterpress printing on chincolet, done with an etching before, so I feel like we could easily do stuff like that for the Patreon, especially considering that a good amount of my audience is online, and B, the times. I'm lucky to be working with a really cool videographer who's helping me with a ton of stuff. Because for a while, I am like the type of person that wants to do everything myself. And I was like, I can film myself doing that stuff. And I'm like, no, I can't. It's like so hard to edit yourself. I don't know how you can edit your own voice because I'm just like, oh God, I look stupid in this. Oh, okay. But yeah, I'm really excited to have workshops. I'm going to start with offering more one-on-one and kind of having a mailing list and a kind of interest list would fill really easily. But lithography kind of like got to like get some people interested. And we have a bunch of like weird stuff's been happening like all over the summer. The yoga studio that I had been going to closed and then kind of closed permanently.
Mm-hmm.
And so a bunch of yoga refugees have been doing yoga in my back room of my studio, which has been really cool. It's kind of like we're in the warehouse and there's all this like type everywhere and we're just doing yoga.
Beauty.
So we still have yoga classes in there twice a week. And we have a lot of really cool stuff lined up that's just like talented people in the community that have things to share.
I love it when art spaces diversify like that. And because I feel like it really breaks down these barriers that people sometimes have around art. Like, I don't know about art. Art's not for me. I'm not an artist. Art's weird. I don't get it.
Yeah, I can't draw. I suck. And it's like, no, dude, you don't even have to draw the set type.
Like, exactly. And like, I think the more that art spaces can reach out and be like, just come in, just be in the space and be comfortable with it and get to know it, you know, through whatever that is, whether it's community courses or yoga or kids programming or classes, like whatever it is, it's like, just come and be together in an art space, because this is like what being a human is about, is sharing this kind of thing.
Exactly. So like, you know, I have some really amazing people I know who maybe are not exactly like creative, but they have awesome skills, or they're just creative and like, but they don't necessarily know anything about printmaking. But you know, we're gonna have all kinds of cool stuff. You know, we're gonna have like herbalism. We're gonna have full moon circles.
Yes.
We're gonna have, you know, some witchy stuff for spooky season. We're gonna have, you know, anything like astrology, candle making. We got a guy who could make organite that's gonna do that as a workshop.
Wait,
you know,
what's
it's just
organite?
like, it really does. Oh my gosh, it is like basically these resin sculptures with layers of organic and inorganic material that like cleanses energy. It's very like funky. Yeah.
Okay. I'll give it a Google later. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely check it out. I feel like I believe in it maybe 50%, but I have one that's really cool and I want to learn how to make it.
Yeah.
And I like rocks, you know. So like if you like crystals and stuff, and also like sculptures and like resin pouring and things like that, then that's your workshop. You know, but it's basically like, I think, you know, I ended up with this kind of extra space, and you know, now I'm friends with a girl who's like a ceramics professor who's going to help me set up a little ceramics area. And you know, I'm hoping that we could raise some money in the future to build a little dark room for like screen printing and, you know, darkroom photography if we can do it. And, you know, it's just basically like all those like analog crafts, like anything that requires some sort of lab or workshop space that there's not a lot of access to, you know, want to be able to provide that.
Yeah. And I think it's really significant too what you were saying a little bit earlier about people having this hunger now for community, because
yes,
we'd really gotten so complacent. I think, you know, people were like, yeah, like I could go bowling, I could go swing dancing, I could go take that ceramics class, but I'm kind of tired and it'd be kind of expensive, so I think I'll just stay in alone and watch Netflix. And then now that that's been taken away so starkly and so suddenly for everyone, I think that a lot of people are having that remorse of what they didn't do when they had the chance. So hopefully as we heal from this, you know, like touch wood, this time next year when we're all vaccinated and healthy, hopefully it will kind of be a lesson learned for people and they won't wait to pursue those things.
Exactly.
And that they'll want to take the darkroom classes, and they'll want to go take that yoga class, and they'll want to go take the letterpress class, and just be around people and be around strangers and get to know them, because this is something that we've had taken from us, you know? I mean, I say taken from us, but it's, you know, it's our own damn fault. But yeah, it's been...
I think, like, you know, for me, the thing that I just really always loved, I mean, the thing I loved about the print shop or the dark room or the yoga studio has always been the same thing. It's just community, you know, like doing those things that, you know, love to do, that, you know, lights your fire, like with other people who are also excited about the same thing. I mean, it's the same reason that we all get so excited to nerd out on Instagram together. It's like, you know, those other people like the same weird stuff as me, you know? So, you know, I really, and especially like when I see the young people, like especially students that are like freshly graduating, and they're like, how do I print in the real world, or like how do I get my work seen and stuff. And there's, now there's a space for like emerging artists and young people to make things and continue learning things, and also get their work seen and maybe sell some stuff and make some money, like I feel like it's hard to be like an emerging artist and but break out, and it's almost like you are in this institutional bubble, and then all of a sudden you're just like thrown out into the real world, and they're like, okay, well now go get famous and make money. And you're like, what do I do? It's like, so I think I really see it as especially like a transitional place for emerging artists, especially. But especially even artists of all skill levels. Like, it's not going to be some shops, like, I've kind of had the cool experience of like working in a good amount of shops, and especially when I was younger, I felt like people had a tendency to maybe be like judgmental or pretentious about like me being young, or there being some sort of like hierarchy of skill and things like that. And I just feel like that's not how creative community should be. Like, if you want to learn and you want to get better, then that should be a good thing.
Yes.
So
yeah.
I think, I'm just looking for it to be like a safe space for people of all skill levels.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it is the kind of thing that really makes cities, I feel like, is places where people can gather. And
Exactly.
Not just around alcohol. Because I feel like...
Oh my God, I know.
Like, I feel like that is the only place where people go to bond anymore, is in a bar. And it's just, which can be problematic for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And so being able to have community around something that like really fulfills and actually lifts you up and like doesn't make you feel like guilty and anxious for 2 days afterwards.
Right?
Really is really significant. And I would love our post-COVID world to recognize the significance of that, because I've been thinking about that, like a lot lately. And I just love that idea that we can come together around something that's not getting fucked up together. And maybe it can actually be about growing together, which I think the world would be better.
Yeah, and everything doesn't have to be like a weird competition or a weird I'm only looking out for myself, and there's no like, I feel like we've really kind of with the digital age gotten away from the free exchange of ideas, and and the free exchange of information and knowledge and like learning, and that being a bonding experience. I think it's really nice to pair that with something like history. Like, it's really cool to see like a Gen Z, I guess, kid, printing on a letterpress from, from 1923. It's like, it spans so many generations, and there's so much history there, and the nonlinear path of history as like a series of like interactions between people and objects, especially,
Absolutely, yeah. I love thinking about the history of objects and the way that they kind of almost have a supernatural ability to cross time in a way that organic beings don't, And so like that, the way that letterpress will be functioning more or less the exact same way, having the same movements in 1920 as in 2020. And it's the world that's changed around it, and it's the people that's changed around it, and it's the the person who created it is probably long since dead, but you can have like a 22-year-old on it with everything that they're bringing to it, having their own unique experience with it. And I think with presses or with these analog machines, there's something extra romantic in that. And I think it's the moving parts, it's the sound, it's their size, it's their heaviness. Like, they have an aura of unmovability, of permanence, that feels very comforting in a digital world, I think. And in a world where the way things function are kind of hidden from us. Like, I touch my phone and it lights up like a Christmas tree. I have no idea how that happens. But looking at like a letterpress, or looking at an etching press, or watching watching a paper being pulled off a plate where you can see the indentation marks from the pressure. There's something really comforting in that, and magic, like we were talking about a little earlier about like the printmaking magic. You can feel that when you get to do that, and it's so beautiful that part of what you're building is giving the TikTok generation a little bit of ancient magic there.
Yeah, and I find that age group ends up being like just so into it.
Yeah.
And it's like a beautiful thing. I am just so obsessed with the energy and like history that comes with each press. And I name them after the people that used them before me, and I have pictures of the people that used them before me, and I have the prints that were made on the press by the people before me hanging in the studio with the press. I think honoring the people that came before you and the ways that the equipment was used before you, and I hope that my presses, when I die, will still be used. Like I'll maintain them, and that's what's beautiful about them, is they're made so well that like as long as you maintain them, like they will live longer than me. And I hope that some of the people that I teach will be able to use it after I'm dead, and maybe they could teach even the generation after them, if global warming doesn't like murder the planet.
Yeah. I mean, but that's a great thing, right? About like the foot crank letterpress, right? Like it's a low carbon footprint production.
Yeah. My one that I have, the one that I'm like trying to fix up, like apparently they do recasts of like the treadle pedal that goes on it. And I'm trying to get one of those because the one that I have is electric. And so I'm always like, what happens if there's an EMP attack or something like, or the sun explodes and all the electronics are like fried on the planet, I won't be able to use my letterpress.
Yeah.
So I gotta get a foot pedal.
You gotta get a foot pedal for it.
It's so funny because it's the only press that I have that like runs on electricity. And when I first started using it, I was like, whoa, this thing's like a different beast. It's like its own animal. But
yeah, what is this this witchcraft here of this electricity? Yeah.
Right? Oh God, but I love it. It's like really you kind of when I first started using it, I really was like very used to the Vandercook, but I was like, wow, this thing is gonna freaking chop my fingers off. The CMP is, I've heard a lot of people say the CMP is easier, but that's a lot. Like, but it's very intimidating. I was very intimidated, but now I feel like I'm dancing with it. It's that's like great. It has so much personality and so many quirks, and like you're like, oh yeah, that roller sometimes it does this, and you gotta like jiggle it a little bit and put oil in this hole, and it'll work. It's like silly stuff like that. So you just like you get to know it like it's a person.
Yeah, hearing you say that, it really illustrates the way you develop relationships with these objects that are really kind of profound and intimate in their own way. That you would never develop with your iPhone. Like they all work the same way. Like there's no just like, oh yeah, that roller does this, or this needs a little bit more oil. There's none of that. It's just it's such a sterile relationship with technology compared to what you're speaking of, which just sounds, really like getting to know someone.
Yeah, it's just so charming, and so tactile. And it really just, it plays with all of your senses. It's like, the ink smells good. The oil smells good, there's the sound of the press and the feel of the paper and the sound of the impression. And the just like, it's just very visceral, It's just like nothing that you can get from an artificial experience. It's very real. It's, and I feel like, the further that we get from it, the more people are appreciating that kind of thing.
For sure. Well, before we sign off, because we've been chatting for about an hour, and I want to definitely be respectful of your time and a very busy time, I'm sure. Can you tell people about your opening that you have coming up? You're having your grand opening. And what's the full title? I've just been calling it Labyrinth, but it's Labyrinth Print Shop and... Oh,
I'm just calling it Labyrinth Studios.
Labyrinth Studios, okay.
Keeping it open. I mean,
I love
it's starting as a print shop, but it's kind of gonna be a catch-all for like really creative people
Yeah,
of all kinds.
because
I just want it to be a hub for people to feel like they can come and do their thing. But yeah, we're going to be like a gallery and a, print shop and a makerspace and, a community gathering spot.
beautiful. And you're having the official opening October 1st, is that correct?
Yes, I am. Yeah. And, we're kind of just going to do rolling gallery stuff for now since, like, I am trying to put on a small event right now and I already am, like, very anxious about the virus. And, like,
Yeah.
I'm not, like, afraid that people are going to get the virus. I'm just, like, worried about, like, people feeling uncomfortable. And, I want to make sure everybody feels safe. And, like, we're all going to wear masks. And, like, I just, it's hard to know, like, what's okay and what people are going to be comfortable with. And so, I think it's going to be more of like a rolling, always open retail gallery type space where people can always come and feel welcome. And then hopefully next year, like, maybe after the election and COVID, once there's a vaccine and everything and stuff like starts mellowing out, then we can have more workshops, more events. And especially I encourage like anybody that's in the Florida area, heck, I don't care if you're in Florida, wherever you're at, like if you want to be involved in a print community and, you're a wandering printer, everybody's welcome. My doors are open for anybody that wants to learn, anybody that wants to print. That's really what it's about, is sharing the love.
That is so good. So please let people know where they can find Labyrinth Studios online and where they can find you and all that good stuff. Maybe see pictures of Conrad, your dog, occasionally.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I do, and I have chickens now because I kind of started to think the world was gonna end.
So what gave you that impression? Oh.
It was feeling a little apocalyptic for a minute there. But yeah, if you want to see pictures of my dogs and chickens and my artwork and my studio, my main Instagram handle is Allie Norman Prints, but the Labyrinth handle is labyrinth.tampa. I use Instagram a lot. I also made a Facebook, but I don't know how to use it. And I have a website that will have, merch and art and all kinds of stuff starting on the 1st also, and that's just labyrinthtampa.com.
Beautiful. Well,
I hope that wasn't too much of a rambling story.
No, not at all. Like I think it was beautiful. Honestly, like it was like an epic journey of like the hero's tale. Like where you were set on a course by fate, and then a storm like threw your ship against the rocks, and then you were on a new island, but then you could see where you're trying to go. It was beautiful.
Yeah, I really felt like I was on my own little odyssey here.
You were definitely on your odyssey. So thank you for sharing that, because I think that it's just really wonderful to hear a story about someone in the arts with a dream that is still doing it and still moving forward, in a time where it feels really overwhelming for people. And so many congratulations to you on your courage and your persistence, and I wish you all the best for the opening. I wish I could be there, but I will be following it closely on your social media, and congratulations, Allie. It's very well deserved.
Oh, thank you so much. It was great to talk to you again.
Yeah, you too, and hopefully we'll see each other soon. We'll have an SGCI, or maybe when the world stops ending, you can come visit me in Thailand at some point, because you can definitely wear a bikini here all year round. So
oh my god, that is what I want. I've always wanted to go there, so hopefully I definitely will be seeing you at SGC sometime though.
Yes,
because I'm not giving those up forever.
No, and so yeah, I'm here for at least 2 years. I've got a 2-year contract with the gallery I'm working for, so I know you'll be a small business owner, but should you get any chance, you'll be very welcome. I'll show you the Thai printmaking scene. It's amazing here. They're incredible printmakers. So Yeah, so stay in touch, okay?
Wow. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, Allie. I'll be releasing it about, I think, this time next week, right before your opening, so see if we can drum up a little more interest and support for you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me back on.
Yeah.
So much fun to talk to you.
So good to catch up. You take care, okay?
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye. Well, that's our show for this week. Join me again next week when my guest will be Deb Cheney. We'll talk about her journey from falling in love with lithography as an undergraduate at the University of Knoxville took her to eventually where she is today, dividing her time between working as a master printer in Brooklyn and France. You won't want to miss it. This episode, like all episodes, was written and produced by me, Miranda Metcalf, with editing help from Timothy Pauschak and music by Joshua Weber. I'll see you next week.